Chapter 21. Malus doubled over, smoke rising from his body as he fought against the presence that had forced its way into his body. It wasn't the same as the experience with Arenlish. This was many, many times worse. The spirit that possessed him permeated flesh and bone, curling around his heart like a serpent and leaving nothing but emptiness where his soul had been. He raged against the spirit's icy touch, focusing all his will to force the presence from his body, but making no impression whatsoever. Fell laughter echoed through his mind. "Release me!" Malus groaned.
Release you? But I've only just acquired you. Do you know how long I've waited for a servant like yourself?
With a roar, the Highborn hurled himself at the crystal. He tore his sword from its scabbard and rained blows upon the gleaming surface. Steel and crystal rang like the clashing of bells, but when he staggered back, his strength spent, the faceted surface was unmarked.
That's a poor way to treat such a fine sword, Malus. If you keep that up, you'll ruin the edge.
What are you? Malus cried, frantic with rage.
Compared to you, I am as a god.
A callous chuckle reverberated through the room.
Your kind, with their rudimentary perceptions, would call me a demon. You could not pronounce my name if you had 1,000 years to make the attempt. For our purposes, you may call me Sarkhan. That will suffice.
A demon! Malus staggered at the thought. A demon inside me? No, I will not allow it! The Highborn fell to his knees and dragged his dagger from its sheath. He pressed the broken tip to his throat. I am a slave to no one, be they demon or god!
If you drive that blade home, mortal, you will not only die a slave, but you will remain my slave for all eternity.
The demon said, its voice cold and grim. You are lying.
Strike then, and find out.
The Highborn's mind raged. Do it. He lies. Better to die than to live like this. But doubt nagged at him. What if he is telling the truth? What reason does he have to lie? With a bestial growl, Malus let the dagger fall to the floor. You said I might remain a slave.
That's better,
the demon said, approval in his stony voice.
Clever little Druki. Yes, I would make a bargain with you. A trade. Your soul for my freedom. Set me free, and I will relinquish my hold on you. What could be more fair than that?
Malus frowned. I am no sorcerer, Sarkhan. How may I free you?
Leave the sorcery to me, little Druki. You know the story of the temple, I presume? Of that worm, Arenlish and his lick-spittle cronies? You must know. It was Arenlish's screams I heard when the great storm was dispelled. How I have longed to hear that sound, Malus. I knew that sooner or later that fool's skull would turn up. But the way you used him to open the gate, it was glorious. For that, you have my gratitude.
Get on with it, demon! The Highborn snarled. Unlike you, I can die of old age, or boredom.
Not within these wars, little Druki. At least, not for a very, very long time. But I digress. Arenlish and his cronies, vile, craven little slugs that they were, succeeded, at great cost, in trapping me in this crystal many thousands of years ago.
Trapped you how?
How they did it is not important, Malus. It is enough to say that they did. They bound me to this place and made me their slave. I'm certain you can appreciate how horrible this was.
All the more reason for you to release me, Malus snarled.
Do not make light of my tragic circumstances, little Juki.
The demon replied coldly.
The 5 sorcerers drew upon my vast power to serve their own pitiful schemes. But they trifled with powers far beyond mortal ken, and that proved to be their undoing. One by one, they met with terrible fates, until at last that fool Erenlis walled himself up inside his own skull and was lost to history for millennia. But the wards those fools laid upon me still remained. I curse their names for all eternity, but I will admit they did their work well when constructing this awful prison. As soon as Erenlis was gone, I began clawing at the walls of my cell. I was able to amuse myself with the acolytes and slaves that the sorcerers left behind, but little else. Slowly, I was able to extend my reach a little further beyond my prison. Within the last 100 years, I was able to extend the limits of my awareness to the walls of the temple itself. But I could go no further. The wards were too potent, even for one such as myself.
So you admit you have your limits? Some god you are, Malus sneered. The demon ignored him.
The wards can be unraveled, little Juki. The sorceries involved are beyond the pitiful skills of any mortal sorcerer living today. But I know the words and the rituals that must be performed. However, I need a token from each of the 5 lost sorcerers, 5 talismans that can be used to undo the spells they once wrought. Each are potent magical artifacts in their own right. The Octagon of Pran, the Idol of Kalkuth, the Dagger of Torxus, the Warp Sword of Cain, and the Amulet of Vorog.
What do I know of talismans, demon? I am a warrior and a slaver, not some sorcerer or thin-necked scholar. These men died millennia ago. How am I to find these things, if they even still exist?
For your sake, little Juki, you had best pray they may still be found. Already the sands are running from the hourglass. Even as we speak, your life is slipping from your grasp.
Malus straightened. What? What are you talking about?
I have claimed your soul, Malus. Do you not remember? I hollowed you out like a gourd, so I could fit the merest sliver of my essence into your frail little frame. That is how we are able to communicate right now, and how I am able to know your every thought. I am not one to let my servants go about unattended, you see.
Yet you are killing me. Is that it?
It is more fair to say that you killed yourself the moment you let your greed get the better of you.
The demon said smugly.
When I claimed your soul, your body began to die. In fact, you would be dead right now if it weren't for my power. But not even I can halt the inevitable. If your soul is not restored within a year, your body will perish, and your spirit, will be mine forever.
A year? Malus exclaimed. I have only a year to find 5 long-lost relics. You ask the impossible.
Perhaps.
The demon readily agreed.
But there is no way to know until you try. And if you fail, well, I'm certain there will be others who will seek out the temple, especially now that the Gate of Infinity is no more.
Malus ground his teeth in frustration. I could just stay here, he said defiantly. You said yourself that I could linger here a very, very long time.
Oh, clever little Druki.
The demon said.
You are right, of course. You could linger here for 100 and 100 of years, slowly shriveling to a withered husk like those wretches you fought beyond my door. By all means, stay then. I will wait for another willing servant. Feel free to amuse yourself with the baubles Erenlis and his cronies heaped about me, though I must confess, even this much gold loses its luster after the first century or so.
Curse you, demon! Malus snarled. "All right, I will find you your trinkets."
Excellent! I knew you would come around sooner or later.
The demon sounded as though he'd just succeeded in teaching a pet a demanding new trick.
When you have found all the talismans, you must return them here before the year is out, and I will take care of the rest.
"And then you will free me?"
Not only will I set you free, you have my oath that I will never try to enslave you again. And just to show you that I have your best interests at heart, I will reveal to you that one of the talismans, the Octagon of Pran, is very close by. I can sense it, even in my confined state.
"Where is this trinket, then?"
Upon the mountainside,
the demon replied.
the beast men venerate it. At night I can hear their braying chants, calling out to the talisman for protection. Stupid creatures. Ironic that you may have to kill them all to pry their talisman of protection from their grubby little paws.
The demon sounded inordinately pleased at the prospect. Slowly and deliberately, Malus picked up his dagger and slid it back into his sheath. The highborn rose to his feet. "I'll do whatever I must," he said coldly, his willpower once again reasserting itself. "In a year's time I'll return here, and we will finish what we've begun."
Indeed we will, Malus Darkblade. Indeed we will.
"Do not call me that!" Malus seethed.
Why not? Am I mistaken somehow? Darkblades are flawed things, are they not? Step before the crystal, Malus. There is something you must see.
The highborn frowned in consternation, but after a moment he relented and stepped before the crystal.
Good. Now look closely.
The blue glow faded, revealing a crystal facet that gleamed like polished silver. It was like looking into a mirror, and Malus saw what he had become. His skin had turned pale as chalk. Distended black veins ran along the back of the hand that bore the ruby ring, disappearing beneath the wrist of his vambrace. They seemed to pulse with a steady flow of corruption. His eyes were orbs of purest jet.
Gaze upon what you have become. A man with no soul, bound in service to a demon. And you say you are not a flawed thing, Malus Darkblade?
The demon's laughter pealed like thunder as Malus fled from its prison. Malus fled through the precincts of the temple, slipping in the dust of the dissolved mummies as he plunged down the ramp of the apartments of the doomed sorcerers. The bodies of the acolytes mocked him with their slack jaws and wide staring eye sockets. They seemed to reach out to him as he passed, offering their knives or their hanging ropes. They offered him the charity of the damned. His boots rang along the stone. He flew down the spiral staircase, fleeing the heat of the magma on his face and fighting the urge to fling himself into the flames. When he came upon the mummified corpse lying on the steps, he kicked the body into the lake of fire in his place, envying it its fiery plunge. The stepping stones were waiting for him when he reached the bottom of the stairs, levitated into position at the will of the demon upstairs. What a fool he'd been to believe that he had called them from the depths with the strength of his will. He crossed from one stone to the next with as little regard as he would have paid to the stepping stones of a river. Beyond the plaza and the lake of fire, the statues of the gods seemed to laugh at his anguish, leering at his foolishness in assailing the lair of the demon. "This is what you get for spurning us," the abominable faces seemed to say. "You and your dark mother. Did she hear your prayer in the stone halls above? Did she grant you victory over your foes?" He threw himself at the statues, howling like a fiend, but he had not the strength to throw those huge edifices down. If anything, the idols only seemed to mock him all the more. Malus flung himself from the presence of the four gods, staggering through the ranks of the eternal servants. He dashed their obedient bodies into dust, screaming curses at their craven poses. Distantly he could hear the sound of screams and the ringing clash of steel. Beastmen and Druki alike cried out in rage and pain. Malus drew his sword and ran towards the promise of battle. Can I ever spill enough blood to drown the memory of my reflection? Malus stumbled into the cold light of day and beheld the carnage at the temple gate. The beast men had made a hole with their heavy two-handed hammers, and dozens of corpses lay in mounds just beyond the breach. 2 of the 4 Noglir lay dead, their bodies pierced and rent by the blows of sword and axe. A third trembled and bled from mortal blows that were slowly stealing away its life. Only Spite survived. Leaner and quicker than his fellows, he nevertheless bore a score of wounds across his armoured hide. Malus's 3 retainers stalked amid the battlefield like carrion crows, their black armour splashed and streaked with the blood of their foes. They had cast aside their empty crossbows long ago, and held red, dripping blades in their hands. They worked with the dispassionate skill of butchers, peering among the corpses and dispatching any wounded that they found. There was no telling how many assaults they had already fought off, biding their time between each wave in the same fashion. They were so intent on their business that they didn't notice Malus until he was almost upon them. It was Lunara who saw him first. She was covered in gore, her hair matted and her face painted crimson like one of Cain's murderous brides. There were scores of dents and creases in her armour, and she held a battered sword in each hand. Her expression was a mask of fatigue. "You've come none too soon, my lord," she began. "They've tried to rush us 3 times now, and only just retreated. Between us and the Cold Ones, we've killed close to 80 of them, but..." The words died in her throat as Lunara registered the change in her lord's face. Her eyes met his, and they widened in horror. "My lord? What?" Malus howled like a wounded beast and buried his sword in Lunara's skull. Dalvar and Vanir saw the blow fall and cried out in horror and dismay. The Highborn leapt at them even as Lunara's body was falling to the ground. Nagaira's man moved to the left, his hand drawing back and snapping forward in a blur of motion. Without thinking, Malus swept his blade around and knocked the thrown dagger aside. He rushed at the rogue, snapping a blow at his head that Dalvar blocked with the long knife in his left hand. The rogue's right hand drew another long fighting knife and lunged in, stabbing for one of the joints in the Highborn's articulated breastplate. Malus caught Dalvar's wrist in his left hand and punched the retainer across the face with the pommel of his sword. Stunned, Dalvar stabbed for his throat, but the thrust went a little wide, scoring a jagged cut along the line of Malus's jaw. The Highborn snarled and thrust the point of his sword into the rogue's left armpit, where the armour afforded no protection. The point caught in the joint of the arm. Dalvar stiffened, his face going white with pain, and Malus leaned against the blade, grating against gristle and bone and sinking slowly deeper into the Druki's chest. Dalvar shrieked and spasmed violently, trying to pull away, but Malus still held his other wrist in a death grip, keeping him in place. The rogue stabbed wildly at him with his dagger, but Malus's outstretched sword arm was in the way. The point of the retainer's dagger gouged him deeply at cheek, temple, ear and throat, but none could dig deep enough to kill. With every blow, every blossom of pain, Malus only pushed harder on his own blade. The point grated free of the joint, pushed past the ribs and sliced through muscle, lung and heart. Dalvar let out a strangled gasp, retched a torrent of blood, and fell to the earth. When Malus spun to face Vanir, he found the retainer waiting for him several yards away. "I want to look you in the eye when I kill you," the knight said, showing his pointed teeth. "I had much grander plans for your destruction, Darkblade. Wondrous creations that would have taken years to end your miserable life. If I am to be denied those glories, I at least want to see the life flee from your pitiful eyes." Malus hurled himself at the highborn knight, raining a flurry of blows at his head, shoulders and neck. Vanir moved like a viper, blocking each blow with the skill of an expert duelist. The dagger in his left hand rapped a staccato drumbeat against Malus's breastplate, vambrace and thigh, probing for weak spots in the armour. When the highborn drew back for another combination of blows, Vanir's sword flicked out and laid a long cut across Malus's neck, narrowly missing the artery. The highborn was a skilled swordsman, but Vanir was a master, an artist of the blade. Now Vanir pressed his advantage, alternating attacks with sword and dagger. Malus blocked the first sword, but took a shallow knife wound through a gap in his right vambrace. He swept aside a lightning thrust, and then he flung himself onto the knight, sinking his white teeth into Vanir's throat. Vanir screamed and writhed, smashing the pommel of his sword into the side of Malus's head, but the highborn would not be shaken off so easily. He bit deep, tasting a rush of coppery blood, and wrenched his head to one side and tore out the side of the knight's throat. Vanir fell back, clapping his hands to the torrent of blood spilling from his ravaged neck, but it was a futile gesture for a mortal wound. Within moments, the life faded from Vanir's eyes, his gaze freezing in an eternal glare of unremitting hate. Malus Darkblade threw back his head and howled like a maddened wolf. It was a cry so savage and unhinged that even the herd of battle-hardened beastmen, now advancing slowly down the road for their fourth assault on the gate, paused in fear and wonder at the sound. The vision of Lunara's face still hung before his mind's eye, tormenting him. The look of horror on her face when she'd realized his failure had been more than he could bear. Malus staggered to his feet, wiping Vanir's blood from his mouth with the back of his black-veined hand. They had all served him faithfully and well, friend and foe alike, he thought. Better they die than witness his awful shame.